"Keep driving." Those were the last words Ethan said before our SUV died. Not slowed down, not overheated, not even a warning light. The engine simply went silent. The headlights stayed on for another second before everything went black. We rolled another 20 feet down the empty highway and stopped. No wind, no insects, no passing cars, nothing. I looked through the windshield. The road stretched perfectly straight in both directions, disappearing into the horizon like someone had drawn a single line across the middle of nowhere. 5 minutes earlier, we'd been joking about who was going to pay for dinner. Now nobody said a word. This is Tales of the Dark. A subscriber recently shared this experience with me. They asked that I change everyone's names, but everything else is exactly as they remember it. There were 5 of us in the SUV. I was driving. Ethan sat in the passenger seat with his feet on the dashboard despite me telling him a dozen times to knock it off. In the back were Noah, Tyler, and Chris. We'd planned a 3-day road trip before everyone started new jobs after college. No destination in particular, just long roads, cheap motels, roadside diners, and whatever we found along the way. That morning had started like every other road trip: coffee, bad music, arguments over directions. By noon, we'd left the interstate and taken a smaller highway because Ethan insisted it would save us nearly an hour. According to the GPS, the road cut straight through a huge stretch of forest before reconnecting with the main highway. It sounded simple enough. For the first hour it was. The road was empty, but that wasn't unusual. Every now and then we'd pass an old mailbox or a rusted fence disappearing into the trees. Otherwise there was nothing. No houses, no gas stations, no people. Around 3 in the afternoon, Tyler looked up from his phone. "Has anyone else noticed we haven't seen another car in a while?" Noah glanced out the window. "I was just thinking that." Ethan shrugged. "Probably just a quiet road." Maybe, but the silence outside felt different. Even with the windows cracked open, I couldn't hear birds or wind, just the tires humming against the pavement. Eventually, even that sound disappeared. Not because the SUV stopped, because the road changed. It was smoother than before, perfectly smooth, like fresh black glass. I frowned. "When did they repave this?" Nobody answered. Chris leaned forward between the seats. "How long have we been on this road?" Ethan checked the GPS. "It says 28 miles. I laughed. "No way. We've been driving for almost 2 hours. He tapped the screen. "It still says 28. I reached for my own phone. No signal. The GPS app was frozen. The blue arrow showing our location hadn't moved in several minutes. "That's weird." Tyler held up his phone. "No service here either." None of us thought much of it. Until the mile marker appeared. 117. A few minutes later, another marker, 117. I slowed slightly. "Didn't we just pass that?" Noah twisted around to look behind us. The previous sign had disappeared around a bend that didn't exist. The road was perfectly straight. "You guys are messing with me." "No one's messing with you," Chris said quietly. We kept driving. 10 more minutes. Another sign, 117. Nobody laughed this time. Ethan leaned closer to the windshield. "Maybe they're all numbered the same." "They're not." I pointed toward it. The paint chip on the top corner. It was identical, the same scratch, the same rust stain near the base. It looked less like another sign and more like the exact same one. We passed it. Again, Noah finally broke the silence. "I don't like this road." Neither did I. I pressed harder on the accelerator. The SUV responded for only a second. Then the engine died. Everything that happened after that felt wrong in ways I still can't explain. The radio cut out. The dashboard went dark. Even the clock vanished. We coasted to a stop beneath another mile marker, 117. Ethan tried the ignition. Nothing. Again, nothing. The battery wasn't dead. The engine simply refused to acknowledge the key. Chris climbed out first. The air outside felt strangely cold despite the afternoon sun. He looked both ways down the highway. "I don't see anyone." I joined him. The silence hit me immediately. No leaves moving, no birds calling. The forest on either side of the road looked completely still, almost frozen. Tyler kicked one of the tires. Maybe it's the alternator. You know what an alternator looks like? Noah asked. Tyler shrugged, not even a little. For the first time all day, Ethan looked genuinely worried. We should have seen another car by now. I scanned the road again, nothing, not a single vehicle, not even in the distance. Then Chris pointed across the trees. What's that? At first I couldn't see anything. Then the sunlight shifted. Beyond the pines, sitting on a low hill, was the outline of an enormous Victorian mansion, dark, weathered. Its steep roof and tall windows rose above the treetops like it had been there for centuries. I stared at it. How did we miss that? Everyone turned toward it. There was no answer. The road had been perfectly straight for miles. A house that large should have been visible long before now, yet none of us remembered seeing it, not even for a second. Ethan shaded his eyes. If someone's living there, maybe they've got a phone. Tyler nodded immediately. Better than standing here. I looked back at the SUV one last time. For reasons I couldn't explain, I suddenly didn't want to leave it. The road felt safer, predictable. The mansion didn't. Still, we didn't have much choice. We locked the SUV, grabbed 2 flashlights and a bottle of water, then crossed the shallow ditch toward the trees. The path leading uphill looked old, almost swallowed by weeds, but it was unmistakably a path. Someone had walked it before. As we climbed, the forest seemed to grow quieter with every step. By the time we reached the top of the hill, the road below had disappeared behind the trees. The mansion stood directly in front of us. Its paint had peeled away decades ago. Several upstairs windows were broken. Long vines climbed the stone walls. Yet one thing immediately caught my attention. The massive wooden front door stood slightly open, as if someone had been expecting us. The front door moved, not much, just enough for the old hinges to groan. No wind, no one touching it. It simply opened another inch. Nobody spoke. Tyler finally broke the silence. Tell me someone else saw that. I saw it, Noah whispered. Ethan took a cautious step forward. If somebody's inside, maybe they heard us. He knocked 3 times. The sound echoed through the mansion. No footsteps answered. No voice called back. Nothing. We waited nearly a minute before Ethan pushed the door open the rest of the way. A cold draft rolled out. It smelled like damp wood, dust, and something faintly metallic that I couldn't place. The entrance hall was enormous. A grand staircase split in 2 before curving toward the 2nd floor. Portraits lined the walls. Every face had been scratched away, not vandalized, carefully scratched, as if someone had spent hours making sure no eyes remained. Chris frowned. Who does that? Nobody answered. Our flashlight beams swept across the room. Everything was covered in dust, except the floor. There were footprints, bare footprints, fresh, leading deeper into the mansion. They didn't come from outside. They began in the middle of the entrance hall, as if someone had simply appeared there. Tyler laughed nervously. Nope, he turned toward the front door. We should leave. He reached for the handle, pulled, nothing. The door wouldn't move. It opened a second ago. He pulled harder, still nothing. Ethan joined him. Together they shoved with both shoulders. The heavy door didn't budge. It must have swollen shut, Ethan muttered. From what? Noah asked. The weather. There hasn't been rain in days. The silence returned. Finally, Chris pointed toward another doorway. There has to be another exit. We followed the footprints instead. The next room looked like an old dining hall. A long wooden table stretched almost the entire length of the room. 5 plates, 5 glasses, 5 chairs. Every place setting looked untouched, as though dinner had been waiting. For us, Tyler's voice cracked. No, Ethan said quickly. Probably coincidence. Nobody believed him. I walked closer. The silverware was spotless, not a speck of dust. One of the glasses still had water inside. I reached toward it. No, moments before my fingers touched the glass, Noah grabbed my wrist. What if someone really is living here? He was right. We backed away. That's when we heard it. A chair scraped across the floor upstairs, slowly, one long scrape, then another. Everyone froze. Chris looked toward the ceiling. Someone's up there. Ethan called out. Hello. No answer. Instead, 3 slow footsteps. Walking directly above us. Left, right, left, then they stopped. Tyler whispered, "Let's get out of here." We searched the first floor. Every room looked abandoned. The kitchen cupboards were empty. The library shelves held nothing but dust outlines where books once sat. One bedroom contained an old crib covered by a white sheet. Another room was completely empty except for a single rocking chair. The chair moved gently back and forth. No breeze, no broken windows, just moving. Chris stared at it. It was already doing that. "I don't care," Tyler snapped. "I don't care why." As we walked back into the hallway, Ethan stopped so suddenly Noah bumped into him. "What?" He pointed toward the staircase. The muddy footprints we'd been following had changed. Originally, they led away from the entrance. Now, they led toward us, as if someone had walked down the stairs while we'd been searching the rooms. The prints ended only a few feet away. No return tracks, nothing. The person had apparently stopped. Right where we were standing, Noah slowly turned in a circle. It was here. Nobody laughed, nobody even breathed. Then came the sound, a car horn outside, one short blast, our SUV. Tyler sprinted toward the nearest window. "I can see it." We all rushed over. There it was, parked exactly where we'd left it. The highway beyond looked completely normal. "I knew it." Tyler smiled for the first time in nearly an hour. "We just have to find another door." He ran back toward the entrance hall. We followed, except the entrance hall wasn't there. We stepped through the doorway expecting to see the staircase. Instead, we found ourselves inside a long corridor lined with dozens of identical doors. Everyone stopped. Chris looked behind us. The dining room's gone. I turned. The doorway we'd entered through now opened into another hallway. No dining room, no kitchen, no entrance, just more doors. Tyler grabbed the nearest handle. Locked, the next one locked, the third opened. Inside was a small bedroom, a neatly made bed, a suitcase sitting on top. Tyler walked inside. His face went pale. "Guys, the suitcase was his, the same stickers, the same broken zipper." He slowly unzipped it. Inside were all his clothes, his headphones, his wallet, everything he'd left in the SUV. Nobody had brought luggage into the mansion. Nobody. Tyler backed away from the bed. "I don't want this." Ethan grabbed the suitcase. "We're leaving." He carried it back into the hallway. The suitcase was gone. His hands were empty. We stared at him. He looked down at his palms. It was right here. Then another sound echoed through the mansion, a voice, soft, almost impossible to hear. "Ethan." He looked up immediately. His expression changed. "Dad." No one else had heard a man's voice. To us, it sounded like distant whispering. But Ethan stepped toward the end of the corridor. "Dad." I grabbed his jacket. "That's not your father." He looked confused. "What? Nobody's here." He blinked several times. The distant whisper disappeared. He rubbed his forehead. I thought, before he could finish. Every door along the hallway slammed shut at exactly the same moment. The bang echoed through the mansion like thunder. The lights from our flashlights flickered. For one terrifying second, everything went completely dark when the beams returned. Someone was standing at the far end of the corridor, too far away to make out a face, just a motionless figure watching us. Then, in a voice that sounded frighteningly familiar, it spoke. "You're taking much longer than the last group." Nobody spoke. The figure at the end of the hallway didn't move. Neither did we. Our flashlight beams trembled just enough to make its outline shimmer, but it remained perfectly still. I tried focusing on its face. Every time I thought I could make out its features, they seemed to blur. Almost like my eyes refused to hold onto them. Tyler was the first to step backward, very slowly. "Don't run." His voice was barely louder than a whisper. "I don't think it wants us to run." The figure smiled. "At least, I think it did." Then every flashlight went out, not one after another, all at once. The hallway disappeared into absolute darkness. Someone screamed, I don't know who. For a few seconds there was nothing but panicked breathing and the sound of shoes scraping against the wooden floor. Then my flashlight flickered back to life. I was alone. The hallway was empty. Ethan, no answer. Noah, nothing. Chris, silence. My heart hammered against my ribs. Tyler, a voice answered almost immediately. I'm over here. It came from the room directly beside me. I reached for the handle. My hand stopped halfway. Tyler had been standing beside me when the lights went out. He couldn't have gotten into that room without opening the door. I never heard it. The voice came again. "Come on, man." I stepped closer. Something felt wrong. It sounded exactly like Tyler, too exactly like a recording. I backed away. The voice changed. It laughed softly. Then another voice came from farther down the hallway, my mother's. "Sweetheart." She'd been dead for almost 6 years. I closed my eyes, covered my ears. When I opened them again, the hallway had changed. The walls were narrower, the ceiling lower, the air colder. I started walking, not because I knew where I was going, because standing still felt worse. A beam of light appeared around the corner. Ethan. This time it really was him. He grabbed my shoulder. "Thank God. Where is everyone?" "I don't know. What happened?" I heard my dad calling me. His face had lost all color. I followed him, but he looked over his shoulder. He never turned around. We found Noah a few minutes later sitting against a wall, staring at the floor. He looked exhausted. I saw my little sister. He spoke without looking at us. She asked why I never came home. His sister had died in a car accident when he was 14. None of us knew what to say. 3 of us now. Tyler and Chris were still missing. Then we heard footsteps. Running, Chris burst into the hallway. His shirt was torn. His face was covered in dust. "We have to leave. Where's Tyler?" Chris couldn't answer. He just shook his head. "What happened?" He swallowed hard. I watched him open a door, and there wasn't a room behind it. The hallway went silent. There was another hallway. So it was full of people. He looked at each of us. They were standing shoulder to shoulder. Doing what? They were all facing Tyler. Nobody interrupted. He turned around to call me. Chris's voice began shaking. They all smiled. And the door closed. He took a long breath. I haven't seen him since. Before anyone could respond. The mansion groaned, not the sound of old wood settling, something much deeper, like the entire building had taken a breath. The floor vibrated beneath our feet. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Then every grandfather clock in the house began chiming, one after another. The sound echoed through every hallway. Ethan looked at me. The front door. We ran. For the first time since entering the mansion, the hallways didn't seem to change. It was as if the house wanted us to reach the entrance. We rounded one final corner, the foyer, the staircase, the portraits, everything exactly as we'd first seen it. Only one thing had changed. The front door was wide open. Beyond it, the highway, our SUV. Parked exactly where we'd left it. Morning sunlight poured through the doorway. Chris didn't hesitate. He sprinted outside. Noah followed. Ethan and I were right behind them. The moment my feet touched the grass, I heard something behind us. "Wait," Tyler's voice. I stopped. Ethan grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. Don't look." His voice cracked. "Please." The voice came again, closer. "I'm right here." It sounded terrified, desperate. Everything in me wanted to turn around. Instead, I got into the SUV. Ethan started the engine. It roared to life on the first try. No warning lights, no strange noises, as if nothing had ever happened. Chris slammed the doors locked. Go. I didn't need to be told twice. The tires screamed against the pavement as we sped away. Nobody spoke for almost an hour. Eventually, Noah looked behind us. "I can't see it anymore." "What?" "The mansion." I checked the mirror. Only trees, just endless forest. When we reached the nearest town, we stopped at a gas station. The elderly cashier looked at us for a long moment. "You boys come from Route 17? Ethan nodded. The man's expression changed. "You break down." Nobody answered. He sighed. "Happens every few years." "What does?" "People stop asking questions after a while." "What mansion?" I asked. He frowned. "What mansion?" "The one near mile 117. He stared at us. "There isn't a mansion out there." He pointed toward an old photograph hanging on the wall. It showed the same stretch of highway, nothing but an empty field. The date beneath it read 1989. We left without another word. Weeks passed. None of us talked about that trip. We agreed never to go back. Life slowly returned to normal, at least. We pretended it had, until Chris called me one night. His voice was shaking. "You still have our trip photos?" "Yeah." "Open them." I grabbed my phone. The The first picture showed all 5 of us loading the SUV. The second, only 4. Tyler was gone. Every photo after that showed just the 4 of us. His backpack wasn't there. His seat was empty. Even the motel receipt from the night before listed 4 guests. It was as if Tyler had never existed. The next morning I drove to his parents' house, a family I'd known since middle school. His mother answered the door. "I'm sorry," I said. "I was looking for Tyler." She smiled politely. "I'm afraid you have the wrong house." I stared at her. "You've lived here my whole life." She looked confused. "We've never had any children." The front door closed. I stood there for several minutes, unable to move. That night I opened my laptop. Without thinking, I searched the highway on satellite maps. The road was there. Mile 117 was there. The empty field was there. No mansion. Just before I closed the map, something caught my eye. A tiny grey shape in the middle of the field. I zoomed in. The image became blurry. Then it sharpened. It wasn't a building. It was an SUV parked alone in the grass. Our SUV, the driver's door was open. Standing beside it were 5 people. 4 of them were facing the camera. The 5th stood several yards away, looking toward a place where there was nothing at all, as if someone had just opened the front door of a house only he could see. If you are brave enough to hear more nightmares, subscribe to Tales of the Dark. And if you have your own terrifying experience, leave it in the comments or send your story by email. Maybe your nightmare will become the next story told here.